Hello, I think we're live. I could be wrong. Let's see, it doesn't. Can you guys hear me / see me? Hello, I think we're live. There we go. I could be wrong. All right. Hello, everybody. Sorry, I am a total noob to streaming, and this is my first time setting it up. So hello, thank you everybody so much for coming. I am super excited and also kind of nervous, not gonna lie. But I'm really excited so many people showed up. I was worried that with time zone stuff, it wouldn't work. But hello, welcome. So I have kind of a layout for the stream, or kind of a schedule. And it's also mostly just meant to be kind of a chill hangout. So basically I have questions that people submitted beforehand, but I'll take questions live from chat too. I'm probably just going to start by talking about why I made the comic in the first place, because I feel like that's kind of a good starting point. And then we can go to questions or literally talk about whatever you guys want to. Like, just let me know in chat what you want to talk about. But basically, like, Soul Brothers started because, oh, yes. Yeah, sorry for the echo. It should be fixed now. Let me know if there's still an issue. So Soul Brothers was actually not my first Nuzlocke comic. I think most people know that. Can people hear me? Geo is saying that it's not working. Let me know if other people can hear me. Okay, are we good to go? Sorry for technical difficulties too. Again, I don't stream very much at all, and this is my first time using OBS for it. So, okay, we're cool. But yeah, so like I discovered Nuzlocke comics back in 2013 actually, and I didn't write one at first because I was just kind of checking out the community and what it was all about, and I just thought the idea was really cool. But then most of the comics I found were actually drawn digitally. You know, that's how a lot of them are made. And at the time, like I didn't do digital art. I didn't have a tablet or like any way to do so. And so I was like, well, I guess I can't join in because I have no way to make a comic. But then I came across Nessa's Emerald Nuzlocke, if you guys are familiar with that one. And that one is drawn entirely in pencil, or at least it was at the time. She's since switched to digital art in the newer chapters, but most of it is drawn traditionally, and the art is like gorgeous for it. So that was what kind of inspired me to make my own, because it was like, oh, like I actually can just like draw it on paper and upload it or whatever. So that was how I first started making Skyward way back in the day. But then after that comic, I kind of fell out of art for a while because I got really, really into competitive Smash Brothers. And so that took up like years of my life. That was like all I was doing with my free time. And then, I kind of wanted to get back into art again because it was like I hadn't drawn in a while. So Soul Brothers was basically just a way to get me drawing again. It was just a passion project because it was like I had done a Nuzlocke before and they were very fun. And so I was like, I could just do that again and be super chill about it. And, I didn't have an upload schedule when I started. It was just kind of doing my own thing of like, when I feel like working on it, when I feel like drawing, I'll draw it. And then whenever I finish something, I'll upload it. But I also got a lot more involved in the community when I was working on this comic. Cause like with Skyward, I didn't really put myself out there much. I kind of just posted it on my DeviantArt page and thought, if people are into Nuzlocks, I hope they find it. Like I didn't really put myself out there at all. But with Soul Brothers, I kind of discovered that there was a lot more to the community, a lot more connections people make, especially like on Discord and on the forums and things like that is where people were more active. And so I got a lot more involved in that, which was really, really fun because then I actually felt like I was getting to know people from the community and also just like networking better with like, hey, I have a Nuzlocke comic. Like, do you want to read it? And then I can find a bunch of other people's through networking with them too. And so now I've read like way too many comics to keep track of in my head. But that was kind of how it started out and why over time I got a little more, I guess, serious about it, or like I had more of an upload schedule and was working on it more consistently and also just kind of taking the story more seriously as it went on. So that's kind of just like a rundown of why I made this comic in the first place. But I will just like jump into some of the questions people were asking beforehand, unless people from chat have questions. Again, feel free to shoot them out. But I'll just go with some of the ones that I got beforehand. Let's see. I'll try to pick ones for people who are here in the chat, because I know some of the people who asked these aren't here yet, but we're going to try to make it later. So let's see. Deja's here. I could look at some of your questions you gave me. Okay. So Pakara/Deja was asking, what was the process for translating Pokemon you caught into the characters we know and love in the comic? Mainly referring to extra backstories and information we got outside of their roles on the team. Were there certain things like the Mon's natures, the way they battled, etc., that defined how their storylines played out? This is a really fun question because there are actually like a lot of different things that went into play there. So I think the biggest one actually was something that happened in game. So Scarlet's whole character is kind of based on one moment that happened in the playthrough. And this is what's so cool about Nuzlocke to me, is like using the playthrough as an inspiration jumping point of like, it can just inspire all these really cool ideas for a story just from like random things that happened in the game. So I can't remember exactly what route it was, but basically Scarlet was at the front of the party and she was still a Vulpix at the time. So not evolved yet. She was basically, I was just training her up. And we ran into a Wild Dugtrio because I forgot there were Wild Dugtrio. And Dugtrio has Arena Trap. So Scarlet is a Vulpix trapped in a battle against a Dugtrio, and there's no way to switch out. So it's basically like she has to beat this herself or she's dead. Like that, there's no other way out of it. And she just was a total boss. Like, we confused it, we got a burn off of Ember, and we were just like slowly chipping away at its health. And she got out of the battle and she beat Dugtrio. And like that basically inspired everything in the comic, like her like fearlessness and badassery, and just like especially moments where she fights a Pokemon that has a type advantage on her, like a whole herd of Gyarados is just coming at her. She just stands her ground. She's like, well, we got to fight him to get out of this. Like that was all inspired from that moment, and like an homage back to that moment of like, she just does it. Like type advantages be damned. Like she just wins. So that is like one of my favorite moments from the playthrough that came up in the comic. So that was like the whole basis for Scarlet, basically. Like I feel like I was always going to make her a pretty serious character, but that was what inspired, what she, like some of her actions in the comic and stuff. Vlad's inspiration is probably the stupidest one. It's like, it's not even gameplay related. It was literally just like, okay, Zubat's design doesn't have eyes, and what if it had eyes? Like, what would that look like? That was literally the whole basis. And then also, like, when he evolves into Golbat has such a freaking huge mouth, like, it takes up the whole body, and I was like, what if small mouth instead? Like, that was the whole idea behind it. So that one's, like, probably the dumbest inspiration, but that's basically why he has the face that he does. I just drew a Zubat like that to see what it would look like, and it just looked hilarious, so I just kept it. Like, that's how Vlad exists. So so those are like a couple of them. Another one would be Garrett, because Garrett is less about something that happened in the game, and his character is more just like an exploration of an idea I had already done, because back in Skyward, which was my first Nuzlocke comic, like it's set in the same world as Soul Brothers, so it's like 15 years after, which is why Sky shows up. She's the protagonist from the other comic. But she has Nora, the Nidoqueen, who was a Nidoran in that playthrough when she first joins the team. And so even then, I kind of had this like lore going on with like the Nidoran like culture, I guess, and like the way their packs work, and like the strongest, like you have to be the strongest one to come out on top. They like have a hierarchy based on physical strength. And so that was already kind of pre-established in the canon of the world. So when I caught Garrett in my Soul Brothers run, I wasn't sure if I wanted to use him because I wanted the team to be really distinct from the Skyward team. I didn't really want to have the same species because I just wanted it to feel unique. And it's like there are so many Pokemon out there, like why not use some that I haven't used before? But I'm glad I did because I couldn't help it. I just love the Nidos so much. I love those Pokemon and the whole evolution line. So it's like, screw it. I'm going to use him because I love Nidoran. And so he ended up obviously being a really important character in the comic, who kind of re-explored the same concept as Nora in a different way. Because Nora basically is in the, her pack or whatever. She like gets bullied a lot. It's super toxic. She has like a really rough upbringing. And she basically gets to a point where she's like, screw you guys. Like, I'm just going to try to survive on my own because screw this. And she leaves. And there's a little more to it than that I won't, get into if you haven't read Skyward. But with Garrett, I thought, okay, what if though a Nidoran like stays in their pack and like they actually grow up in that environment and like with that mentality of just like strength and like I have to be as strong as possible. Like what kind of character would that be? So that was the idea behind Garrett, was just kind of like re-exploring this idea that I had already used with a similar character, another Nidoran, but just in a different way. Well, a Nidorino, really. I caught him as a Nidoran, but I grinded him up and evolved him like immediately before progressing in the story. So when it came to the comic, there was no reason for him to be a Nidoran, especially since like Nidorino, makes more sense since he already, was older and had lived for a while and was, working on making himself stronger so much that he would have been evolved by that point. So like those are some of the main ones, I guess, that took inspiration from the games or I guess like from some other source. Excuse me. And then some of them were like, they didn't necessarily have inspiration from the game. Like, Corey and Ty, I can't remember any like specific moments that came up that inspired their characters. They totally came later. But yeah. So that's kind of some background on some of them. Let's see. Here's another one from Bakara. Outside of Ty being a starter mod, was there any factor behind he and Corey being not only close but actual family? And did you decide to take the family angle before or after Ty's unfortunate passing? This one, unfortunately, I don't have a great memory. And also I don't really like write down that much story planning. So some of this stuff is a little fuzzy, like the order I planned everything in. Because I know that I didn't have the idea for Corey and Ty being brothers when I first started playing the game. I had no idea what I was going to do with the story. Again, it was just to get me back into drawing. So I was like, I'm just going to like do a Nuzlocke run and make a story. Like I didn't really think much about what the story was going to be. But the main reason that I then chose later to make that decision was mostly just to skip all the intro stuff of the story, because a lot of comics spend a lot of time on the introduction, and that's not inherently a bad thing. Like it's also good to have setup, and there are comics that do it really well, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But just for me personally, like I wanted to just jump right into the meat of the story and skip over all the like, oh, like we go meet the professor and like get our starter Pokemon, and then they like meet each other. I just wanted to skip over all of that. So I knew that I wanted them to have, a pre-established relationship with each other. I just didn't know yet what that was going to be. But I did really like, writing themes of family and just really positive family portrayals, because a lot of media doesn't do that. Like a lot of media has really negative portrayals of family. And that's important too, because it's like a lot of people do have strained relationships with their families, like especially with parents. A lot of parents in media are not great parents, or they're just absent. But I just like having more positive portrayals of family and wish we saw that more. So that's what I wanted to do with my own story. So I was like, it would be really cute if they were siblings. And I'm also just such a sucker for siblings, like sibling characters as well, because I have 3 younger siblings myself, and I'm very protective of them, and I love them. So that is like the surest way to get me invested in as a character. It's just like, give them a younger sibling, and I immediately will die for them. And then I guess like the other piece of it aside from that is just like it fits really well with the kind of how the world works too, where I have Pokemon a little more equal to humans and they're more integrated into society in a way, or at least it's approaching a point of being that way. And so it was a way to show like Pokemon are integrated into society. Like sometimes humans literally even have adopted them into their family. So that was like another reason. And like, I don't even know how much I, had all of this in mind, or like was thinking, oh, like this is going to help with world building, all that kind of stuff. When I was making the decision, it was almost more subconscious, where it just like seemed to work, So that was the main reason that I went with that. But okay, let's see. I'm trying to see. I want to see who else is in chat and if anyone else here has left questions. Let's see. I don't think Farrell's here. I don't think Flavia's here. Oh, here. Okay, so Tom asks, do you have any tips for beginners who are having trouble sitting down to write their Nuzlocke story? This is like a huge topic, and I could probably go on like all day about it. But like the very first thing I would say is just like have fun with it. That's literally the whole point of doing this, is like to have a good time telling your story and drawing and being part of the community. So like whatever you decide to do, make sure it's something that you are really interested in making. Oh, hi, Erie. Thanks for coming in at 1 a.m. Thanks for popping in. But yeah, just have fun with your comic. And like, you don't really have to worry about being unique or worry about like, am I following like Nuzlocke trends of what people do with their stories? Like, you can literally do whatever you want with it. So don't fret over that kind of thing. But if you're having trouble knowing what to do, like that's kind of why it's great that they're based on playthroughs, to where like you can take inspiration from how your playthrough goes, or certain moments that come up, and just like extrapolate on that. Like kind of like what I was talking about with what happened with Scarlet. Like just have moments in your playthrough that you can go like, oh, like how could I translate this to a story or to a character, and just kind of take it from there. And like the games already have a plot line, and like even if it's not always like the most great or interesting plot ever written, you can always default to that if you want to follow more closely to the story, and if you don't know what to do with it yourself, or you can totally diverge from it, whatever you want to do. But my main thing is just like, whatever you decide to do with the story, make sure that you're excited about it and that you want to tell it out of passion, because that's really what's going to stop you from burning out, is like that you care, and like regardless of like how many views or comments or whatever you get, like you really like the story and you want to keep making it. That's like the surest way to make sure that you want to keep working on your story. Hey, Face Trip, welcome everybody who's here. If I missed somebody who popped in, hello everyone, good to have you here. Okay, another question Tom asked was, which panel or chapter of Soup Brothers is your favorite? And I left the typo in there because it's so funny, and that is not the first time that people have accidentally made that typo, and it's great. But so yeah, like panels and chapters that I would say are my favorite. My favorite chapter, or at least the one probably that I'm most proud of, is the Steelix battle with Garrett. The moment. And actually, this is why I have the comic pulled up in case we wanted to go to a specific page to talk about it. Let me see if I can find it. Where is that? Oh, here we go. So this page is the one that I'm most proud of, because it's really where I feel that my writing really came together well. Like, it's almost like a mini climax in a sense. Like, I mean, it's the climax of Garrett's story, basically. So it's like there's the main plot line, but then there's also, like not necessarily every character, but like some characters have their own story arc that's also going on, or like little subplots going on. And so I felt that this was really a culmination of Garrett's character, and I laid out a bunch of groundwork for his character, and just like the way that he grows over the course of the story, and the way that we learn more about him and why he thinks the way he does. And then it all kind of comes together in this chapter. And like almost every moment of this chapter is like set up beforehand, or like everything was building up to what happens here. So I'm just gonna, I think it's kind of starts on this page, or this part, but I mean, well, I guess there's some stuff on the other page, because like one of the first things is that he is like really hesitant to jump into battle because it's like this Steelix is literally like destroying this whole freaking city. Like it's set up to be very dangerous and make it clear that like they are not at a level where they should be fighting a Pokemon like this yet. Where is it? Oh yeah, here. Like it's his inner thought, so he's not saying it out loud yet, but just talking about how like Jasmine is a Pokemon master, like her Pokemon are. So this is like basically the ace of her team that she beat the league with. Like it is far beyond their level of experience, and that is basically suicide to jump into battle against it. Because like this plays into his I guess like almost inferiority complex is the word for it, where it's like he is all about strength, but he knows that he is not as strong as he could be, or like he thinks lowly of himself because of his inability to evolve, even though he's actually a pretty freaking tough dude on his own already. But he just like has such a mentality ingrained of like, I just have to be the strongest possible person. And also like the survivalist mindset of like, if there's someone tougher and I know they're going to beat me, like we don't want to engage with that because we don't want to like show the weakness of losing to people. And we don't want to like get ourselves killed because we tried to be tougher than we are. Yeah, no, same Picaro. I'm still not over his death. This chapter still destroys me every time. This is actually the chapter, believe it or not, that I cried at the most working on. Like, because the deaths later are like more tragic in a way, just because Ty was so much closer to Corey. But this chapter just destroyed me emotionally. Like the later stuff, I think I'm still in denial about. Like I still don't think Ty's dead. It hasn't actually set in yet, even though that was like, I think like a year ago now that chapter was posted. Maybe not quite a year, but like we've known for a while, but it hasn't set in yet. But like this death destroyed me. But anyway, so like, yeah, like that's his mentality going into it. But then also the fact that like, yeah, where does he come in again? Here, yeah, like he's still trying to convince them to fall back. Like he's like, we cannot win this one. Like this is not a fight we should be doing. But of course, the others want to, like especially like Ty and Zoe and such, because there's the heroic side of them that's like, if we don't, like who's going to? Like people are in danger and we have to do something kind of, mentality. And then like this moment too, like this is a big character moment for him because this is where he actually tells Corey, like, you need to tell us what to do, like, because you're not leading in this situation. And that's why he's here. But like up to this point, these two have had conflict over Corey telling him what to do and how like he doesn't want that. Like he wants to do his own thing. So this is like, a character growth moment for him too. And then of course we get Scarlet evolving, but then we have the moment that destroys me every time. Because like, even despite all that, and even despite him seeming to be like a really self-centered, well, a lot of times he is actually very self-centered for the rest of the story. He saves Corey, like he's literally throwing himself at a Pokemon like 10 times his size and weight just to protect the team. Because he's like, I'm not going to run. Like, he's not going to run away from this, even though he wants to. There's also the part of him that's like, has become attached to the team or like, recognizes that there's value in them too. And then like this moment is like hearkening back to, his struggles with his inability to evolve and just how frustrated that makes him. And just like, if my body doesn't like work right in the sense that like it doesn't evolve like it's supposed to, like at least hold out on me, at least be tough enough to like get through this battle. Just like this self-loathing that he carries with him all the time. And then, yeah, this moment too. So like he's still trying to get up to battle, and the line about why are you all risking your lives when you have so much to live for is basically a reflection of like, he doesn't think he has anything to live for. And again, just like kind of showing his kind of internal state and how he thinks of himself while this battle is going on and why he acts the way he does. Yeah, and then basically everybody else is down and unable to fight at this point. And this is the point where it really doesn't make sense to keep fighting. Like he should, from a survivalist standpoint, run like hell right now and get out of there. But he stands his ground knowing that, yeah, there's probably no way that I can win this, but I'm not going to freaking run away. And then, yeah, just that's just the whole thing going on here. But then, this moment too, all of this, again, like all of this is stuff that's set up beforehand, and it kind of just culminates all in this moment. Because then Speckle starts cheering him on, which in some chapters prior to this, when he's talking her through her first gym battle, he makes a comment about nobody would cheer for a jackass like me. Like who would cheer for me? Because that's when he's talking about like his stage persona of like he kind of puts on this act where he's like flashy and cool when he's, you know, in the arena, because he thinks if he just acted like his normal jackass self that he is in the arena too, like nobody would root for that fighter. But this is like the moment where he's the most himself, where his mask has the most come down. And that's the moment when Speckle is cheering for him. And then the whole team starts to cheer. And it's like, that's like the validation that he needed of like, even in this moment when he's like his most vulnerable and his most like raw, nasty, angry self, they are cheering for him and they're like, you're going to do it. And so that's what gets him fired up. And then of course he doesn't win, but he takes Steelix down with him, which is all he really needed to do. So that's just like kind of and then of course this moment at the end, of course I added this because it wasn't sad enough already. Just like he never says it to the team, but in his head, like the very last thing is that he doesn't regret what he did because that was the best crowd he ever ran with. Those were the best people he ever met, even if he gave them shit for being cheesy. That's how Garrett's story wraps up. And so that's why that chapter is like my favorite and why I'm the most proud of this one, because it really is just like, I felt like my writing came together really well. And there were a lot of pieces in the background kind of playing into what's going on and why things play out the way they do. That's kind of a little walkthrough of chapter 36 and like, you know, why I wrote it the way I did. And then in terms of like, what was the other piece of the question? I think favorite panels. Let's see. Yes. Also favorite panels or panels you're most proud of. Let's see. I had a few written down. I went through some of these beforehand because like I didn't want to have to be searching through the whole dang comic like on stream trying to find something. But for favorite panels, I couldn't pick just one favorite panel because there are so many. But I have some of them. And some of them are for artistic reasons, though that's usually not the case because I know that, like, you know, because it's a comic, and again, because it was just for fun, I was, you know, making these pages efficiently, so to speak. Like, they are not the peak of what my artistic ability is. It was more about the efficiency of getting pages out and just making it look good enough that information is conveyed well. So there aren't many places in the comic where I go like, oh, like I'm so proud artistically of how good this looks. And I don't mean that in a self-deprecating way. It's just like I know that I went through this quickly, like drew it quickly just for the sake of time. So it is what it is. But this is one of my favorite panels because I love these two so much. Celia and Kira are so wild and chaotic, and they're actually some of my favorite characters to write. And so I love this moment because there's like, I love the eyes bugging out of these two. It has like a very cartoony feel of them like getting jump scared, like old cartoons with the eyes bugging out. And we can also just see right away like the chaos of these two are like hiding in the bushes looking like some like shady people. And then no, they just pop out and jump scare them. I just had fun with this. So this is one of my favorite ones. What else? What other panels? Oh yeah, I think I talked about this one a little bit in the whatchamacallit. There's some like comic retrospective meme thing that people did where it just like asks questions about your comic and stuff. And one of them was like panels you're most proud of. And so I know I talked about this one here. Oh, can you not see the page? Give me just a second. I'm not sure why that's happening. Are you guys still able to see my screen? I don't know. From my end, it looks like it's still up, but yeah. Let me know if you can't see the comic pages for whatever reason. or what's on my screen. Let's see, where is it? So yeah, in the Miltank fight. Well, I do like this panel. This isn't my favorite one in the chapter, but I do enjoy the way. Oops, I went too far. Oh, too low on the screen. I'm sorry about that. Okay, let me make sure this one is centered right. Oh, it might be because, yeah, I'm zoomed in pretty far, so it might not be capturing the right thing on the screen. Sorry about that. Here, I'll zoom out just a little bit to make sure. But yeah, this one right here with Garrett sliding under Val, the Miltank, is fun, just like the motion of it. But I wouldn't say that's my favorite one. My favorite one is actually this one right here. I had fun. This is one that I'm actually kind of proud of artistically, because it is also like very, very cartoony, and I feel like it captures kind of like my understanding of like cartooning and motion and things like that. Like the way that her body kind of like flops over itself with the folds here, and the way the arms fling back as she smacks into the ground, and like the tail drooping over, the nose ring flying up, like just the whole thing. I am really happy with like this pose and how it came out. Sorry, I don't think I'm scrolled right again. Sorry. The stream is a little bit more zoomed than my own screen, so I apologize. Again, I'm a total newbie to doing streams and making the layout look right. So hopefully this is better. Here, I don't know, should I zoom out even more? Maybe like that. I don't know if you can see that very well. Okay. So yeah, so like that's another one that I am pretty proud of. One of my favorites, just for cute reasons, is, let's see if we can find it. Let me go back. Oh, now we're too zoomed to find anything. Give me a second. Where is the gym battle where Speckle evolves? I think, let's see, right here, I believe? No, not that one. It's the previous one. Oh no, that's too far along too. Give me a minute. There's so many pages. Okay, here. Yeah, the one where Speckle evolves, and then yeah, this one right here. I hope I'm zoomed right for you to see it. The one where she holds Ty's hand to her fluff and she's like, "Feel how fluffy I am." I just like this one for how cute it is. I enjoy it. So those are like some of my favorite panels in the comic. Let's see. Let's find another question. Unless someone in the chat has anything, but I haven't seen any questions come through yet. Let's see. Corvid says, "You and Meowth inspired my Pokemon world of having Pokemon be more equal to humans and Pokemon getting trainer licenses. Would Pokemon get jobs and in yours like mine?" Well, that's really cool to hear. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy Burning Sky a lot. Burning Sky is really, really freaking cool. But yeah, like mine is set up to where like Pokemon can get jobs that people can, basically. It kind of works the same. I imagine like society is getting to a point where like they're not quite there yet. There are still a lot of wild Pokemon, and some like choose to stay wild. But theoretically, a Pokemon could get any job. I love the panel where Corey's dad hits Jinx with a stick. It's in one of the last chapters. Yes, actually, that one was really fun. Yes. Well, because I was like, okay, they would not just stand around doing nothing. Like, I feel like he would try to help in some way or another. And just the image of a dude just whacking a Pokemon with a stick was funny to me. I think it's this page. I want to say. Or no, whoops, this is the battle against Sky. It's earlier than this. Oh, I also like in this chapter, like in the Lugia battle, I also like the part where Amla evolves into Lugia and there's like the light shining out of the water tornado as he evolves. I like that panel too. But let's see if we can find hitting Jinx with the stick. I might be, oh, here it is. Yeah. Yeah, Kira jumps in and he just takes a stick and whacks her. That was a fun one too. I enjoy it. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Let's see, Bryce. I don't think Bryce is here. I don't know if he's going to be able to make it. But Bryce asked, what was the hardest page to draw? So this one kind of has two answers because there's like the hardest from an emotional standpoint and the hardest from a technical standpoint. So like from a technical standpoint, it is absolutely the chapters that take place in Olivine City. Like I'm trying to remember where that is because they stayed in Olivine City a lot longer than I initially anticipated. Like there were so many plot things to happen there. And it's like a huge city that has, buildings and architecture. And like, I just hate drawing cityscapes. And mostly because I haven't practiced it. So that's on me. But I was just not prepared to, like here's one of the chapters. I'm trying to think how many buildings are in this one. But even like the chase scene where they're running down the street with all the buildings on the side. Yeah, just like shots like this. I know they don't look that great, and I know that like buildings are not just perfect rectangles. I get that, but like I just didn't want to deal with this shit. I didn't want to deal with drawing a big city. So these were the hardest from a drawing standpoint. They gave me the most trouble, and they were, I guess, the most. I don't know if stressful is the right word, but just the most challenging artistically. But then when it comes to emotional, obviously Garrett's death scene, we talked about that already, but that one was really hard to draw. I literally cried at every point of the process. Like I cried when I was planning it. I cried when I was scripting it. I cried when I was sketching it. I cried like every single step of making that page. I cried when I got to Garrett's death. So that one was absolutely brutal to get through. Another really tough one was the bullying scene. That's like in the extra chapter that does a flashback to their childhood and like their school life together. And there's the kid that attacks and bullies Ty. That was really hard to draw. Here it's this page. Of course, I'm talking about how horrible it is, and now we're gonna go look at it. But I just don't like people being horrible to each other, but it's like I wanted it to happen for story reasons, but it's just like, especially this panel where like he just like can't defend himself and this kid's just being a little asshole. I hated drawing this. So that was another tough one from an emotional standpoint. And then also like the scene with Scarlett's flashback where we find out what happened to her in the past and why she hates Team Rocket so much. That part was really hard to draw, especially the panel where she's like looking down at her sister with just like that hopeless look and like she knows what she has to do and you realize what she's going to do. That was really, really hard to draw. Just like, it's understandable why, but those were the toughest ones. And then the funeral scene in the video was really, really hard. I think for obvious reasons, again, just like an emotional challenge to get through because like when you write such an emotional scene, you have to like steep yourself in like the mood of what you're working on. And so it's like I had to bring myself to a very emotional, mournful place to be able to work on it. So it's just like difficult in that way. So those were some of the hardest ones, but the hardest one to draw technically was the cities. But Face Trip asked, what is your process for creating your Pokemon designs for the comic, like the changes to Togepi? That's a great question. The process is actually kind of different depending on the Pokemon. So like some of them were obviously very huge deviations from the canon design, like Omelette. And for Omelette, part of that came from like wanting to give him a connection to Lugia, because I basically just looked at them and I was like, okay, they're both plot relevant. Like it's Soul Silver, so like Lugia is the box art legendary, And the Togepi egg, yes, you don't have to use Togepi in your team, but like you're given the egg in the game, so it's kind of like, here, like this is a moment that's supposed to happen, you taking care of this egg. And they're both white birds that have psychic powers. So it's like, that's a very interesting connection. So that was like kind of what sparked the idea to make him literally be like a little baby Lugia. But his Togetic design, like the middle stage, was based on a mix of chocobos and feathered dinosaurs. Mostly just because I wanted to. There wasn't much of a reason besides that. I just love chocobos, and because I knew I wanted to make him more bird-like, I wanted to do a similar thing with like the face having the crest feathers on the back. That's literally based on a chocobo. And then, oh yeah. So Gio mentioned the Magneton design. That is probably one of the designs I'm most proud of. I really enjoy Zoe's design. That basically just came from me trying to figure out how a Magneton worked logistically, because it's just 3 Magnemites stuck together, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And it's like, does that mean it's like 3 separate entities that just stick together, or what? So I was like, I wanted to just throw that out and have it just be like one singular character and not have to deal with the logistics of that. So that is the reason I went the direction with them that I did. And so it was basically like, how can I still make it read as a Magneton, even though it's one creature? So it's like, if their hands are huge orbs, huge metal orbs, like its body is, or like their body is, then there you go. It can kind of read the same way without being exactly the same. Corvid said, remember when you unintentionally referenced PMD with Zoe? Yes, okay, so I have never played a Mystery Dungeon game in my life, and I know nothing about the lore or anything that happens in them, but apparently Magnemites are the police in those games or something like that. I had no idea, and like I just randomly decided to make Zoe a cop, and apparently that's like canon to the game. So that was a really, really funny coincidence. How do you figure out how to show different Pokemon moves? Oh, yeah, that's a tricky one. I think that a lot of times, like my logic for the way moves work in this universe is not necessarily that there are like set moves that they learn, like in the games where it's like they can only know 4 moves, they're specifically learning Razor Leaf right now, or something like that. It's more like they kind of have these innate elemental powers of some kind that they can use in different ways. But it's a little bit fuzzy. I didn't plan out like super specifically how it works, because obviously there are times where the trainer calls out a certain move they want them to use. So I imagine like move names developed over time to kind of, indicate certain ways that their powers can be used. So a lot of the time it really is just like, basically rule of cool, what Gio is saying, like just what's a cool way to represent how this Pokemon might battle. But then there are times that I wanted it to read more like a certain move, just so people understood what was going on. So like, for example, in the final battle against Sky, I can actually just pull this up right now. Ashley, the Vaporeon, uses Aurora Beam because Sky is specifically talking about not using water attacks because they're not very effective. And so I wanted it very much to read like an ice move, so we understood what was happening. And since Aurora Beam, right here, is so distinct, I don't know how well it shows up on screen if it's too small, but there's like little rainbow swirls through the attack to kind of indicate what attack it is, because I wanted it to be really clear that she was using Aurora Beam, that she was using an ice move. And then like in Skyward, there's a point where Blaine's Arcanine uses Fire Blast, and I took it right from the anime where it's like in the star shape of the fire kanji, because I wanted to indicate, hey, it's Fire Blast, which is like a really strong move to show how strong this Pokemon is. So sometimes I take it like directly from how it shows it in the games or anime if there's a reason that you need to know it's a specific move. But otherwise, I kind of just play around with it. Like even here, like Zoe using, I guess this would be like Thunder Punch, but it's like they have electric powers and they have hands, so they can do electric punches. Like that's really as far as my planning with that went. Ty's water claws are really cool. Thank you. That was actually not the claw part, but the way I drew it was actually inspired by Lyra's comics, because the way she does like water effects or like water encasing Pokemon looks really freaking good. So I definitely borrowed that from her. And then also a little bit from Avatar: The Last Airbender too, like the idea of waterbenders, you know, covering certain parts of their body in water to attack with. That's kind of where that was inspired from. So yeah, no, great question. I didn't think about Pokemon moves all that much until it became relevant at certain points in the story. But yeah, let's see, what else do we have question-wise, unless I see something else in the chat. But let's see. Chronosoja asked, did you ever get burnout while writing or drawing? I would say I didn't really get burnout, only for the fact that, you know, again, when I started out, I wasn't pushing myself to stick to an upload schedule. And so it was hard to get burnout when, like, there was no pressure. It was just like, if I didn't feel like working on it, like sometimes there were literally like months at a time where I hadn't uploaded, and it was because I was doing other things. And so there wasn't really anything to get burnt out on. And then like later in the story, when I started to take it more seriously, honestly, the community was just like so supportive and wonderful that it just made me so motivated to keep working every time. But burnout is like super duper real. Like there are definitely points where, I guess I wouldn't call it burnout, but there are definitely points where, you know, I wasn't feeling that great about a scene or where I was going next, or just like, you know, kind of feeling unsure with what to do. So that is where, like, it's really important to rework scenes that you're not excited about or interested in. Because it's like, if you're not excited about it, why are your readers going to be excited about it? So like, if you find a scene is boring you, the creator, there's probably something wrong there. So like one time I did this is like back in the beginning in the Sprout Tower, which is like way at the beginning of the story. I originally was just like kind of following how it works in the game. And it was just like, well, they gotta go up the tower and battle some people. And then I guess that part of the story is done. And then I went back over my script and I was like, this is so boring. Like, this is going to be such a boring chapter to make. And that's no good. So then I basically just rewrote the whole thing to have like the goofy, like tourist trap moment, whatever. Like the whole thing is just like a tourist attraction. Yeah. And then just like the goofiness with this guy who's obsessed with Bellsprouts and how cute they are. Like all of this was just added later because the first write of it was really, really boring. So it's like, if you run into that, or if you run into burnout, like it's okay to just rework stuff into something that's more exciting to you. Because you really do need to have things you're excited for throughout the journey. And I guess that's probably partly how I avoided burnout too, is like throughout different parts of the story, like, you know, partway through, like midway through, later on, like there were all these scenes I was really, really excited to get to and looking forward to. So if all the things you're excited about are at like the climax of your story, you might burn out getting to that point because that's all you're looking forward to. You got to have stuff along the way that you're excited to get to too. So that would be like my advice for how to avoid burnout, is like make sure there's always something fun or interesting or cool coming up that you really want to get to at various points of the story. Let's see what else. Who else asked things? Dirtwig, I don't know if Dirtwig's in here or if they were able to make it or not. But Dirtwig said, was there ever a close call where you thought the run was going to fail? So actually, I think I have mentioned this at some point in Discord. I can't remember. We actually failed at Bugsy multiple times. I wiped to him, I think either 2 or 3 times. I can't remember for sure. His Scyther's brutal, dude. Like, that fight's kind of wild. But I have a rule for myself that my levels of my team can't exceed the gym's ace Pokemon. It's basically just a way to make sure it stays challenging and that I can't win by just grinding the hell out of my Pokemon until they can steamroll everybody. So, like, we just could not beat Bugsy. So this is actually a point where I had to, like, break that rule a little bit and get, I don't remember how many more levels it was for Ty to evolve into a Croconaw before Bugsy's gym. So that's kind of a little nod to that in the comic, where they do lose to Bugsy the first time because he destroyed us multiple times before we actually beat him. and then Tai evolves and comes back, and that's when they're able to beat him. So that actually happened in the playthrough. Other than that, I don't remember the playthrough super well, and like going through my notes of the gameplay, I didn't find another moment where we were like on the verge of wiping. The most, team members we lost at one time was like 2. So there was never a point where we were worried about everybody wiping, aside from what happened with Bugsy. Purple Chug. Also, I don't know if they made it to the stream or not, but they asked, do you have any big changes to the plot while you were actually drawing it, or did everything get settled in the pre-art stage? And are you willing to share some old plots that didn't make the cut? There were definitely changes. So give me just one second here. So one of the biggest ones, this one's weird. I had this really weird plot line that was actually going to go like way darker than Soul Brothers already is, but like there was going to be a point, let's see, it's in the Olivine City is kind of where it happens, but basically they're being chased by Team Rocket, and Scarlet has the Umbreon pinned down, like the Umbreon that's a member of Team Rocket, and they kind of have like this tense back and forth with each other. Let me see if I can find this, because that was going to play out totally differently and go in totally different direction. Where is that? I think it's this. But basically, she was actually going to kill the Umbreon in the original script, and actually basically just snap and go apeshit, and kind of just, blow up at Team Rocket, which, understandable. Like she's valid for doing so after what's happened to her and after what they're doing. But basically, like, the cops were already involved here with Team Rocket being around, but it was basically going to be a case of like, this Pokemon is like unhinged, like she's not safe to be on a league team, like she's out here actually killing people, and they were going to try to like basically arrest her or like capture her and not let her be part of a league team anymore. And Corey was having none of that, and was basically like, they were basically going to run from the law, and like the rest of the story was going to be like play out similarly, but have them basically just have to like be in hiding, kind of. It was weird. Like, looking back on it, I don't know why that was my plan originally, and I don't know how it would have serviced the story in any way, but that was like probably one of the biggest changes and weirdest changes that the story went through. It was going to go in a totally different direction. But let's see, what else? Zoe's arc. Zoe was actually going to have more of a story arc than they do now. Because like they mentioned that they want to be a cop, and that's like their dream, and it kind of comes up a couple of times throughout the story, but it never really goes anywhere. And then at the end, they decide that they'd rather just stay with the team, and being a champion is like a better alternative for them. And I didn't have anything super concrete planned for them, actually, in terms of like, I don't know what I was going to do with their story. But I just feel like there could have been more of a character arc there, and just showing more of them. But I think it's also okay, especially when you have a cast this big. You have a trainer and a team of 6, presumably. So like most Nuzlocke comics are going to have a cast of 7 traveling around, which is a lot of characters to juggle. So I think it's perfectly fine to have like side characters in the team, so to speak. Like you have ones that you focus on more, that get more fleshed out over the course of the story. And some of them are just like there as side characters, and like they contribute sometimes, they're part of the team, but like you don't have to have this huge story arc for every single Pokemon on the team. If you want to, you certainly can, like, go for it. But I think it's okay to just have some side characters, and that's kind of what Zoe and Pearl ended up being. So that was something that like originally I wanted there to be a lot more for their character, but it just didn't end up fitting in anywhere. Like I didn't know where to put it or what to do with it. Another big change is actually with Hero's story, Hero the Delibird. Originally, Hero was going to leave the team. So like there's the moment where they want to leave, or at least she says like, I don't deserve to be here, or like I'm not strong enough to be on a team like this. And they convince her to stay at the end of the chapter. But originally she actually was going to leave, and she was going to come back in the Lugia battle. And so it was going to be like this moment of like, we think she's gone and that she's down on herself. And then she like save someone in the fight, like a Pokemon's coming at somebody and then some ice attack hits them and then it's heroes back, and she'd have some line about like a real hero never runs away or something like that. I didn't fully like script it out or plan it, but that was originally what was going to happen. The reason I changed it is, for one, like this part where she says this is not that far away from when the Lugia battle actually happens. So it would have been like she leaves and then comes back like 2 chapters later or something like that. So it wouldn't really feel that impactful, at least to me. Like, it didn't seem worth it to have her gone for such a short time. Like, just keep her around. And then the other thing was, like, I feel like this actually kind of services the characters better to kind of have this conversation, because this is a side of Scarlet that we really don't see much. Like, this might be one of the only points in the story where she has a very nurturing side. Like, a lot of times it comes out as tough love, but there are times where she's like, hey, like, no, don't call yourself a fraud. Like, I will teach you, because this is a skill that you can learn. And so I think that this actually ended up working out better character-wise, just to have them kind of have this moment. And it tells us a lot about the characters involved, and it also kind of creates a connection to the team, too. Because something that's tricky about, you know, characters that come into the story so late is just that you have to make them, you know, like, relevant or feel like they should be there when the story is almost done. Like, it's a very late capture. And so this was a way to make her connected to Scarlet and have them kind of have this friendship right off the bat as a way to kind of like integrate her into the team. So there were a few different reasons to change it the way I did, but those are the main ones. And then, oh yeah, the only other change was that originally Scarlet's backstory, it was originally supposed to be a romantic partner and not a sister that gets infected. But then I realized, hey, the barrier gaze trope is really not that great. Like, maybe let's not do that, because it functions just the same with being a sister. And actually, I think it functions better with it being a sister she lost instead, because that gives her a really good connection with Corey, that they've both lost a sibling to Team Rocket. So yeah, originally it was going to be her girlfriend that gets infected, and then I didn't do that, because, yeah. So those are like some of the biggest changes. If there are others, I can't really think of them. They were probably pretty minor. Those are the biggest ones. Let's see. What else do we have? Which characters are... This is another one from Purple Chug. She asked, which characters were easiest to work with and which gave you the most trouble in terms of design, drawing, writing, etc.? In terms of drawing, like, it's probably Scarlet. Like, and that is completely on me. So full transparency, I did not like use references or do like studies of canines before designing Scarlet, and I really, really needed to, because like her anatomy is kind of whack. Like, so she was the hardest to draw just because I didn't take the time to practice, which is really dumb. Like, she didn't have to be a challenge, but I made a challenge for myself. But the easiest to draw is Ty. And this is actually, or at least he's my favorite to draw. He's probably, I would say, maybe easiest. I don't know. Vlad is pretty easy too. But Ty was specifically designed to be really fun for me to draw. Like me personally, with my like aesthetic and art style, is designed to be like everything I like drawing in a character. So that's why he has such like round shapes, and just like, yeah, everything about Ty is like designed for my art style. And that was very, very intentional, because I knew I would have to draw him a lot. Well, thanks for coming, Snake Eyes. It was really good to see you. Thanks for coming. So yeah, that's Ty has like the most wholesome design philosophy, or like design process, because it was just like, I'm gonna have to draw him a lot. I better love drawing him. So I just made him as cute and fun to draw for myself as possible. So so that makes Ty one of the easiest for me to draw. In terms of like writing though, and actually like creating the character, I would say like one of the hardest was actually Corey, because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with him initially. Like I knew the starting point. Like I knew that I wanted him to be this really like energetic, competitive, like go-getter kind of kid he's basically in it for the popularity at first. Like he wants to be famous. He wants to be the toughest trainer or the best trainer in the region. He wants to be the champion. But I wasn't sure like where I wanted to go with his story. Okay, see you later, Yume. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later if the stream's still going on. I have no plans for how long this will go. But yeah, so let's see. Sorry, lost my train of thought. We were talking about writing. Who are we talking about? I apologize. My mind just completely blanked. Oh, we were talking about Corey. Yeah, so Corey, like, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with his character later. And especially, like, after Ty dies and we lose that dynamic that, like, so much of the story relied on, I didn't really know, like, I felt like I didn't know his character internally enough to know, like, how he would react, how he would take this, what his grieving process would be like. So I had to spend a lot of time, like, working on that and figuring out where his story would go from there. And I like where I landed. Like, I think it works well with the themes of the story because he kind of comes to realize that, like, you know, even though he and Ty ended up having kind of different goals, or at least different perspectives on what was happening, they also were still united for the same thing. And that comes into play, like, I think it's in here is like when he first voices it, when they're in the Lugia battle. Where is it? Wait, I think I missed it. It's somewhere up here. Oh, yeah, here. Yeah, when he says, like, my dream and Ty's dream were never in conflict. To be a champion is to protect the people of the region. Like, he kind of comes to find a new meaning in what his dream was, because originally it was just, like, he just wanted to do it. He just wanted to be the best. And it comes to a point where it's like Ty really, really was selfless and cared about protecting people just because it's the right thing to do. And that's a very noble goal. And, like, maybe our dreams weren't in conflict because by still pursuing being the champion, he can still, you know, it's still his dream, but it also incorporates what Ty cared about too, of, like, this is also a way that we can have the power to protect people when these situations come up. So that's kind of where I ended up going with it. And because, like, we had to get to a place where, like, it still makes sense that he would want to be the champion. I mean, theoretically, the story could have taken a totally different turn and he doesn't end up going to the league, but it really felt like it would still go that direction. But good night, Swirlix. Thanks for coming. So yeah, so he was one of the trickier ones to write. In terms of, like, the easiest to write, that would honestly, I mean, I think that Ty was pretty easy to write because I'm very much like him. And I think this was another question too. I want to say Tom asked this, of which character do I most resemble? Like, I see a lot of myself in Ty. I think a lot of myself is in his character. He takes a lot of responsibility onto himself. He tries to, like, shoulder a lot on his own. And he also, like, has kind of this sense of duty of, like, if I can do the right thing, I kind of have the responsibility to do the right thing here, even if it's dangerous. I think that that's, like, a lot of me is in his character in that way. And then, of course, his ties with his family too. I'm very close with my family. So he felt very natural to write. Like, I kind of just felt like I always knew how he would act, how he would react to certain situations. So it's interesting because it was like one brother was tricky for me to write and the other kind of came naturally. So it was kind of figuring out that dynamic and balance too. But let's see. And then, I think there was a question from Pakara that I actually missed. So let me go back to that because I'm pretty sure Pakara is still here. And I would really like to answer stuff for people that are in the chat and here to hear their own questions. Yes. The question I missed was, what made you decide to portray such a realistic take on death and grieving? Did you go into this Nuzlocke comic with that goal in mind, or is it something that evolved along the way as you got to know the characters more? I love this question too because, you know, because Nuzlocke comics inherently have death in them, well, assuming that you don't have a deathless run that you make a comic of, characters are going to die. That's just kind of comes with the territory. I guess you can also do creative things like they leave the team for certain reasons. So there's that too. But in any case, most of them do go the route of the characters actually dying, or at least some do throughout the comic. And so by writing a Nuzlocke, you kind of inherently have to accept that you are writing about grief, assuming that your characters give a shit and actually care about the teammates who died. As long as that's true, there's going to be some kind of grief involved in your story. And it doesn't have to be a central theme per se, but like, because Ty is one of the characters who dies and is literally one of the protagonists and the brother to the other main character, there was no way around it. It was going to be a story about loss, because that is like one of the most crucial things that happens in the story. I would say I didn't know, I guess, how central that theme was going to be when I first started, because I knew that he was going to die. Like, obviously from the start, I knew everything that happened. I knew who was going to make it and who wasn't. But I didn't really think about like the weight of that and how crucial that was going to be to everything that happens. And so in a way, like, the story kind of just is about grief. Like, everything up to Ty's death is just set up for what's coming after and like the aftermath of that moment. And then of course, once it happens, then the rest of the story is about the mourning and coming to terms with what happened. So that really is like one of the most central themes of Soul Brothers is loss and grief. So the answer, the question of like, why did you decide to portray such a realistic take, is basically because I don't really feel like I had a choice. Like, I think I had to, because if I wanted them to be brothers and be so close, and I wanted to follow the playthrough of Ty dying, it had to be this way, because it wouldn't really be right to, have such an important character die, or a character so close to the protagonist, and not treat that very seriously and with a lot of care. And because it just wouldn't make sense for the story to continue and like just go on to like, oh yeah, but we're still going to go to the league, and like we have to get past his death just so we can achieve our dream again, and just kind of like gloss over it. Like, it had to shape the rest of the story. So, and another reason, like, so that's kind of why, from a writing perspective, I felt like I had to do it that way. But also, it just very much fits into my philosophy of writing stories and like why I tell stories at all, which is basically that like I think that we need a variety of stories. Sometimes when we're going through shit, we need like the happy, lighthearted comedies and just like fun slice of life, like those types of stories that just make you feel really good. We need those sometimes. But there are also times where those don't help us, or those feel disingenuous because it's not the place we're in. And when we're in a really, really tough place, sometimes we need to see stories that show our same struggles, and they show that characters get through it. And so it's like, for some people, like, that is the reality. There are people who have lost a family member or a friend or somebody very close to them, and this is the reality, and they're dealing with this. And I think it's also important to have stories that show, hey, like, this happens. Things are really like shitty and dark and cruel sometimes, but let's get through this together. Like, let's see these characters get through it. And not that you can just completely leave behind all the pain and hardship, but that there's a way through it, and there's a way that you can keep living your life after it, which is also partly why Soul Brothers concludes the way that it does. Because it's like, I didn't want it to be like a completely happy ending, in the sense of like everything resolves fine and we move on, because that's not really realistic to a situation where something like this happens. Like, it gets to a place where it's like, yeah, it does still hurt. Like, it's a bittersweet ending because we can't erase what happened, but sometimes there's comfort to knowing that we can move on and live in a way that honors this person. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I find amazing about stories, is how much they can connect people and really speak to us. And so that's another big piece of why I wanted to write about grief in my story, because like some people are in that place, and we need to see stories like this. So yeah, hope that answers that one. Face Trip says, why did you decide to put the funeral scene in video format? Ooh, somebody else asked this too. That's a great question. So this one is a video update. I'm not going to start the video, but something about like you have to, when you tell a story, the medium that you're telling it in really matters, and there are advantages and disadvantages to whatever medium you tell your story in. And with comics, what's really cool is that people can kind of, and this is true of books too, like people kind of take things at their own pace. Some people read slower, more quickly. And so you can kind of like set the pace for the story yourself. And so, for example, when you get to a really like suspenseful moment or like an action scene, you might like kind of whiz through it really fast and you're like scrolling quickly through this comic because it's like you're kind of matching the energy of the chapter or of the page you're looking at. Or like some people might stop and go back to panels they really like and stare at the art longer. And like, it's cool because you kind of like personalize your reading experience of it. But with this one specifically, I wanted to take that aspect away, and I wanted to make sure that it happened at the pace that I wanted, because there were so many little like details and pieces that went into making this scene what it is, that I wanted to make sure, again, that like I wanted to have to linger on things. Like I didn't want people to be able to rush through the page and just, kind of gloss over it. Like you have to sit with each panel for a while. And also there was the use of music too. Like I felt that music is so powerful, it can really set a tone. And so I wanted that aspect too. And again, like kind of setting the pace for the music too, to where, you can have a link to some music on your comic page and say, listen to this while you're reading, but you have no idea how quickly anyone reads or if they'll finish before the song's over or whatever. With this, it's like the moments happen at specific beats in the music and kind of flow along with it. So I basically just wanted a much more kind of like, I don't know if orchestrated is the right word, but I wanted more control over how the chapter played out, if that makes sense, so that everybody's getting the exact same experience with this happening. So yeah, thanks for that question. But the only other place I considered doing a video was actually the champion battle against Sky. I was like, how cool would it be to have like this epic battle on screen? But it was going to take way too much time. So, and it didn't really add much to the story to make that part of video. It doesn't really need it. It was just like a cool idea I had. But this one I felt was very important to actually be done as a video. Corbett asked, were you inspired by YTWC's and Chiaki's video formats, or did you do this on a whim? Yeah, I was definitely inspired by the fact that other people do videos for their Nuzlocke sometimes. I don't know if I would have thought of it on my own if I hadn't seen other people do it first. But I would say, like, actually what inspired me maybe more, although Chiaki's is very, very good, that video still destroys me, and I need to talk to people about it because I'm not okay still. But what actually inspired me more was Nessa's Emerald has a couple video updates in it. And one of them is like epic as hell, like literally one of the inspiration points for making my own comic. And then one of them is like very, very somber, and the music is very like moody and sets this tone, and the art sets this tone. And like that really did inspire me a lot, I think, to be like, this is like the experience that you can give people by doing things as a video. It's a very different experience than reading a comic page. And it's suited very well, I feel, to moments like this that are supposed to be very somber and moody. So yeah, definitely inspired by other people making videos too. Yes, though I'm so glad you agree about Chiaki's video, Pakara. I feel like we talked about it briefly at some point. Yeah, it's wild. But yeah, I'm glad I did at least one video for the comic because it was a really cool experience and I really like how it turned out. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Tom asked, are there any headcanons about your characters that we have to know that never came up in the comic and might surprise us? So I do have some, like, I don't know how much is headcanon and how much is just like little details that I didn't include, but a few of them would be that like genderless Pokemon such as Zoe, the Magnemite / Magneton, the way I handle genderless Pokemon is basically that like those species assign non-binary at birth instead of picking a gender. And so Zoe basically, so like Zoe is non-binary, but they're also technically not trans because they were assigned non-binary at birth. So that doesn't really affect anything at all. It's just like a little tidbit of how I decided genderless Pokemon work and why I made Zoe non-binary. Val the Miltake is trans. I used a bunch of like reference photos of like bulls for like designing her build and like how she moves and stuff. Again, not relevant to the story at all, but she is. I kind of have a crack ship of Speckle and Kira. It's obviously not canon at all. I don't even know what their sexualities are. Actually, no, I decided Kira was bi. I don't remember if I ever decided on a sexuality for Speckle or not. But there's nothing going on between them in the story. I just think it's a really, really cute pairing. So those are just like some random ones off the top of my head. There's nothing like huge or like game changing where the story was going to be totally different. I'm trying to think. I feel like I thought of one other one that I forgot to write down. If I think of it, I will come back to it. Oh, I remember what it was. So Raikkoon was saying in Discord, we were talking about this, about how if you read Skyward has a lot more details about how the afterlife of this world actually works, and we actually learn some of the logistics of it. And so in the Lugia battle, there's the point where Omelette is, kind of remembering past teammates, or like there's like the transparent version of the teammates with him as he utilizes what he learned from each team member. I think it's this page. In Skyward though, like there are spirits that linger around on Earth, especially if they, have some unresolved business or something where they can't be at peace. They actually do linger around. So he was saying like this must be the actual spirits of them are still there with the team, which I thought was super cool because like I myself didn't even think of that. Like when I made this, like this was more supposed to be like Omelette's imagination, like remembering them and what he had seen them do as he implements all this. But I was like, that is really cool. And I like kind of headcanon now with that. And you can kind of interpret it that way. Like it's not, a wrong way to look at it just because I didn't think of it when I wrote it. I think that is absolutely plausible, and it makes this like even more cool. So that was a headcanon that someone else came up with that I also kind of headcanon now. Let's see, who else? Oh, here. What were some unexpected challenges you encountered creating Soul Brothers? Honestly, probably like the biggest thing was probably just like carrying over canon from Skyward, like from my past comic. Because it was like, since they're set in the same universe, there are certain things that are true and have to carry over. Like, for example, guns exist. The only reason that's the case in Soul Brothers is because there's one in Skyward, and it's like, well, they exist. So realistically, yes, Team Rocket would still use guns. So I had to like either work that in somewhere or have a reason that they wouldn't be using them. That was one that was kind of annoying to deal with, but I don't think it really mattered either way, whether they were in there or not. But then there was also stuff like, the logistics of the afterlife was already established. We kind of know a little bit about how it works. So it's like that does hold true in this comic. So even though I didn't think of that necessarily for this scene, like that wasn't originally my intention behind portraying it this way, that it's true. That is how it works in this world too. So there are just things like that as well, that I had to just think about, what still had to hold true and what logically, what people think of if it's like, oh, I've read Skyward, I know this is the case, and it seems like you're doing it differently this time. It's not really that big a deal because stuff gets retconned in stories all the time. So it wasn't really that much of a pain point, but it was just an extra thing that I had to keep in mind. Let's see. I just making sure I didn't miss anything in chat question-wise. Yeah, like, are there other like topics or questions people want me to talk about? I think I might have a few more questions from people that I haven't answered yet, but I want to make sure that you guys can ask stuff too if you had something that you wanted to. Let's see. Okay, I haven't done Pharaoh's questions yet because I wasn't sure if she was going to make it to the stream or not. Okay, so Farrell asked, did you have the general idea and theme for Soul Brothers in mind when you started the gameplay, or did that come to you later on? I think I touched on this a little bit already, but like I mostly just started the playthrough with no ideas of what my story was going to be. So most of it did come afterwards. Actually, pretty much all of it. Some of it came during the gameplay. Again, like there were certain moments that inspired character or plot ideas. But most of it was beforehand, or I'm sorry, after the gameplay is when I actually started planning. Like I like to do an entire playthrough before I start planning a comic because you just don't know what's going to happen. So it's like if you plan, like for example, you plan out this big character arc that someone's going to go through, and then they die the next time you're playing the game, and it's like, oh well, they're not going to be around long enough to have a character arc. You just never know what's going to happen. So I always do the gameplay first before I start planning anything. And then Farrell also asked, how different would the story have been if Ty had survived, or would this story not exist at all if he hadn't died? Yeah, that's a really interesting question because, like, to answer would the story exist if he didn't die, it's kind of yes and no, because I would say like the story as it is now would not exist because the story, again, so much is about grief and the loss of Ty and how that affects Corey that it would go in a totally different direction if Ty had survived the whole journey. I think it would be like much more a coming of age story of like, just like they're getting to the lead together and they're chasing this dream together. And it would be much more about, their relationships and the people they meet along the way and coming of age themes if he were around the whole time instead of the turn that it took. But in terms of like, would I have written the comic even if he had survived? Yes, I was planning to make another Nuzlocke comic. So it just would have looked very different if he were still around. So it would have been very, very different had he survived. So that again, that's like another thing that's really interesting about Nuzlocks, because you're basing it on a playthrough of a game. You don't know what's going to happen until you play it, and things that you might not have planned for your own story might come about just because that's what happened. Like if I were just writing this story on my own and it wasn't based on a playthrough, I doubt that I would have killed off Ty. Like I don't think I would have killed one of the protagonists for any other reason, I don't think. Let's see. I think, okay, some people in chat have already asked some of the questions that others did. Like, for example, Flavia had also asked about the process of character designs. Let's see, purples we went through. Actually, no, I missed a question from Purple. Purple asked, I love how you implemented using a legendary on the team. What helped you make the decision for the gift Togepi to become Lugia? So actually, I didn't use the Lugia in the game, even though it seems like that. I didn't catch the Lugia at all, actually. Thanks for coming, Face Trip. I appreciate it. See you around. I have a rule that I'm not allowed to use legendaries in the comic, in the playthrough, just again for the sake of keeping it challenging. Legendaries are often very powerful, so I didn't even let myself catch the Lugia. It was just always part of the plan that that Omelette was going to be a Lugia in the story, even though I actually was just using the Togepi on my team. And I explained a little bit already about like the connections between them being white birds with psychic powers. I'm trying to remember if there's any lore that actually connects them or suggests a connection between them, because I'm trying to think if this is fanon or canon, because I know I've seen another Nuzlocke where the Togepi has a connection to Lugia, and now I can't remember if that's actually part of the real lore or not, or if that's just fan works. So there could be that too, that I got some inspiration from, whether it's canon or not. And then Purple also asked, were there any characters that got scrapped, like catches never used or deaths immediately after getting captured? There are actually quite a few. The biggest one is a Geodude named Agate. Agate was a Geodude that I had for a lot of the run, actually. So I caught her at the start of the story. I want to say like in the first cave or whatever. and she died against Faulkner. But then I caught another Geodude later, and I decided to use another Geodude and try again. And so she actually was with us through the Elite Four and helped us beat the league. So she was the character that was most far along in being planned and then got cut out of the story. Mostly because, like, there wasn't really a good place to fit her in. Like, the way the story is now, you know, anytime we lose a team member, somebody else comes in, you know, and kind of fills that spot. And so there wasn't really a spot to slot her in. And so there just wasn't a good spot to work her into the story, which is why I didn't end up using her. And I didn't feel that she was necessary, like, with the others on the team. There wasn't really, again, like, a role to fill or reason that we needed to introduce a new character. So that was, like, the one that got farthest along. The craziest story about catches that got scrapped, or actually this one wasn't even a catch, but we almost had a Raikou as a legitimate encounter for this run because it was a roaming legendary. We ran into Raikou in one of the routes as the very first encounter on that route. I just threw a Pokeball. It was like the beginning of the game. I only had regular ass Pokeballs. I just threw it. It shook 3 times before Raikou broke out. So, like, we were this close to actually legitimately having a Raikou in the run, which would have been crazy. Like, again, I don't let myself use legendaries, but had we caught that, like, I don't know, man. I might have broken that rule for myself just because what are the chances that you would ever get one of the roaming legendaries in a Nuzlocke playthrough? So that would have been really interesting story-wise. Like, I almost considered making Raikou part of the plot somehow or be connected somehow just, you know, to reference that moment. But I couldn't really find a way to work it in, so I didn't end up doing it. But that was a pretty cool moment. Chrono says, no one knows where Togepi came from, but we know it is Togekiss, and Lugia are probably a part of the same genus due to color similarities. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can speculate a lot about how Pokemon works. I was going to say Pokemon genealogy. I don't even know if that's the right word. We don't even know if it works the same as how animals are related to each other. But yeah, they definitely have some similarities in design. Another catch that we didn't use was actually we got a shiny Golbat in Victory Road. So that was like an encounter way at the end of the game while we were level grinding to fight the Elite Four. And we encountered a shiny Golbat. And so because of that, I almost made Vlad a shiny in the story. Just like it wasn't actually him. I already had Vlad on the team, but it was like we did get a shiny Golbat. So like maybe I should just make Vlad the shiny. But then when I was designing him, I actually liked how blue looked on him a lot more than the green. So that's why he's not shiny, but he almost was. Oh, and then the absolute wildest catch that got scrapped. Let me tell you the story of Haku. Haku was a Dratini that we caught shortly before the end of the game, and we were going to use him for the Elite Four against Lance, fight dragons with dragons. So I trained him all the way from a tiny little Dratini up into a full-fledged Dragonite, which is a shit ton of level grinding. It took forever. And then we get to the Lance fight. We have Dragon Dance set up. We miss multiple Dragon Rushes in a row. Dragon Rush has 75% accuracy. We miss multiple in a row. Lance uses Blizzard, which has 70% accuracy. It lands right away, and it kills us immediately. It one-shots us. And that Haku did not do shit. He didn't do any damage in the league at all. I was saving him just for that moment, and he missed multiple times, and we died. So that one was so painful because it was like I wasted so much time on this stupid Dragonite training him up, and he did nothing. So that is why he is not on the team in the story, because he is irrelevant. He didn't do shit. We could have taken him out, and the team would have been the same. So that's the story of Haku. That was probably the most painful like capture in this game, or death in the playthrough. Although, actually, funny enough, Hero the Delibird was not actually on our Elite Four team. It was Haku, because Delibird can't do shit, guys. Like, I know we all want to believe that you should just, you know, use your favorites or use ones that you don't usually see. Not for the Elite Four. You do not bring a Delibird to the Elite Four. I did damage calcs before going into that fight, and Delibird would have to be level 81 to even have a percentage chance of one-shotting Lance's Dragonites. And it's not a bulky Pokemon, so it would have died in return. So, like, there was no way that we were going to be able to use Delibird. But Delibird did actually beat one of, one of Claire's Dragonairs. So that actually did happen. So she actually put in work in the playthrough, just not at the Elite Four itself. So those are just some looks into some of the characters we didn't see, or like things about the characters that we didn't know. Yeah, I think I touched on most questions that I got beforehand. The only other one that I missed, Tom was asking about how did it feel setting Soul Brothers in the same universe as Skyward. I talked a little bit about, like, you know, the challenges of doing so, and just like kind of having to carry over some of the canon. But actually, it was a lot of fun bringing Sky and Nora back. I absolutely adore those two. Nora is my favorite character I've created. I love her, and it was really, really refreshing to be able to, like, bring her back and bring Sky back and have them be in the story. And that was something that I was looking forward to literally since the start of the comic. I had the idea, and, like, it made sense because it's like based on Skyward canon, like, she is the champion of this region, or at least of Kanto. And since they're right next to each other, I imagine it kind of carried over to both, because it can. Why not? So that was very, very fun to bring them back and, like, have little references to them throughout the story, and especially, like, just the ending battle, the champion battle, where we get to see, like, Sky, you know, in her adult self coming back for a battle against, like, the new protagonist. It's like both of the protagonists of my stories having a Pokemon battle with each other was just magical. I just had so much fun with it. Like, it was very fun. So it's like, to those who haven't read Skyward, I tried to write it in a way where you don't need that background context to understand what's going on, and I hope I achieved that. I had Erie kind of help me with some ideas of, like, making sure, because Erie hadn't read Skyward either. I just wanted someone without that perspective to be able to, you know, see, does this actually make sense to someone who doesn't know my other comic. So that was really helpful, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, just being able to draw these two talking to each other is really cool. So I had a lot of fun with that. But yeah, that's about it that I had for, like, questions people asked. If other people in the chat have stuff they want to ask, or, like, topics you want me to talk about, I'm happy to do so. If not, we can kind of just wrap up here. Again, this was, like, really chill. I didn't have an exact plan or amount of time this was going to go. But let me know if you do. Otherwise, I mean, I would just say, like, as final parting words, I have to just say thank you again so much for all the support on this comic. Like, it's really, really incredible how many people read and just commented and just showed so much love and support as I worked on it. It's really amazing. And it's really amazing to just, like, go on this journey with people, because, like, it was a very emotional journey for me too. Like, you know, we joked all the time about, like, how much suffering we inflict on each other with our comics and stuff. But, like, at the end of the day, I was suffering making this. Like, it was emotionally difficult for me too, to, like, you know, Ty's my baby. Like, I made this character, and now we have to, like, you know, write the whole grieving process for, like, what, 10, 15 chapters after it happens. Like, it's a whole journey. So just the fact that, like, people went along that journey and we just got to suffer together and just share in everything that was happening is awesome. So I am just really, really grateful to everybody. And I'm really, really grateful to everybody who came out to the stream, because I had no idea if there would be enough people interested to, like, even make this possible to do. I was like, if we only have, like, 2 or 3 people show up, I mean, I guess we can do that too, but yeah. So unless people have final thoughts in the chat, I'm just going to say thank you guys again so much for tuning in, and I'm always down to talk more about comics because I love them. In terms of, like, where I'm going next, I think I posted about this on the epilogue of Soul Brothers and on the forums and stuff, but I would really like to do something original next. I have no doubt that at some point in my future, I'll probably return to Pokemon comics. I'll probably do another one at some point. I already have ideas for more because I can't stop. It's a problem. I can't stop myself. But I really would like to do something original. So I've been kind of in a phase of doing like art studies and really improving my art a lot because I would really like my next comic to look better and more professional. Again, not in a self-deprecating way. There's parts of Soul Brothers that I do really like, and I don't think it looks bad per se. But again, it was a little bit rushed, and I want my next one to be. I want to really pay more attention to the art and put more care into it, and really flesh out that side of it beyond just solid writing and story and characters. So that's where I'm headed next. I will obviously be in the community reading your stuff, supporting other people's comics and chatting. And when I have a new project ready, I will let you guys know. But thank you so much for coming, everybody. Make sure you head over to Pakara's stream later. She is streaming today in, I want to say, like hour 20 minutes. Do I have the time right? I hope. Definitely check that out. It's a lot of fun. She does live comic readings on stream. So that's where I'm going to be hanging out later. But for now, I'll just say goodbye.